writers around the world. This is Aussie writing mentor Jim Parsons with lesson 2 of my YouTube course, Write That Novel Now. In this lesson, I'm going to be looking at the starting point of a novel and the methods, the techniques that all authors use to get from the starting point into the writing. So I'm going to give you my email address. Please email me, say hello, and I will send you a link to lesson 1. And subsequently, I will send you a link every time I put a video up on YouTube. And there'll be lots of other goodies too, all without charge, without obligation, no signing up for anything, no tricks, just good, useful information for the challenge of writing your novel. How do you start? Well, you know, the hardest part of writing 300 or 400 pages quite often is making it a start at all. That blank page is very intimidating. And as well, if an author has just kept you spellbound for hours with her wonderful writing, you're inclined to ask, how did she do that? I could never write a book like that. Well, do you need to? The truth is, you can have a lot of fun splashing in the pool and swimming a few laps. You don't have to win an Olympic gold medal. Have a look at why you want to write. It should be that you want to write for the sheer joy of it, that you feel compelled to write. Don't write for fame and fortune. You've got more chance of winning the lottery than of writing a bestseller. You're not going to get out of your 9-to-5 job overnight. Have I broken any hearts? If you came to this channel thinking that writing a book might make you a fortune, you've come to the wrong place. Leave now. Okay, if you're still here, I'm going to state the bleeding obvious. It doesn't matter how great the novel is. Every novel, including the next one you're going to write, had to start somewhere. And this is where they start. This is where every novel starts. With a concept or a sketchy idea. Now I'm splitting them up. The concept I'm talking about, an abstract idea, something that's amorphous, not formed yet at all. And well, here's some examples. What would it be like to be invisible? Now, that'd be a great topic for a novel. Oh, hang on, it's been done. Yeah. What about if we tried to take Shakespearean dramas and turn them into novels? A great man can be destroyed by jealousy, Othello. A great man can be destroyed by ambition. A great man can be destroyed by too many soliloquies on an empty stomach. Now that's Hamlet. Okay, a sketchy idea. I don't think I have to define what a sketchy idea might be. Let's look at the possibility. Your next door neighbour, a lady of about 50, tells you that she's absolutely devastated because her husband of 20 years has walked out on her. She feels as though her life is over. So you give her a quick hug, you say, gotta go, because you've suddenly got a great idea for a novel. Here it is. A woman of 50 believing her life is over because her husband went off with a younger woman, discovers that it is an opportunity for freedom and growth, and she does something amazing with her life. Now, why do I call that a sketchy idea? Because we don't know who the woman is, we don't know what the background to all this was, we don't know how she discovers that opportunity for freedom and growth, and we certainly haven't even thought up what it is, that's something amazing that she does with her life. So it's a sketchy idea. So, now what?
And as you hold your breath in anticipation, we bring you a message from our sponsor.
Thanks to my generous sponsor, COVID-19. This course is entirely free and completely without obligation. I have been in self-isolation now for 4 weeks, hence this absolutely crazy hairdo, which is going to get a lot worse before it gets better, so get used to it, folks. My face-to-face creative writing classes have been cancelled, and if they resume, it's got to be with Zoom. That's the way I will talk to my students, and with videos. And so practicing this has brought me to YouTube and you. Well, I guess you've discovered already that I'm no slick YouTube presenter, and I don't expect that to get any better. I am going to be thoroughly unprofessional in all my presentation. But hey, that's a small price to pay, I think, for a course that is thoroughly professional in content. The course is based on years of face-to-face creative writing teaching and on the weekend workshops that I present to writing groups around the country. The course material has been adapted from an email-based novel writing course that I wrote about 12 years ago. It's still out there, still attracting students, so I've used many of the exercises from that. And of course, every year I take on a limited number of one-on-one mentoring students to work on their own special project. All right, enough chat, back to work. Where were we? Ah, yes, we have our bright idea. It's the moment of conception for this novel. What now? What now, indeed? We've got our basic concept. This is where all the head work comes into play. Thoughts are ripping around in our head for days, for weeks. These thoughts occupy us while we lie awake at night, or take a shower, or walk the dog, or in my case, when I'm gazing into space when I should be listening to my wife. So, okay, we've got some sort of an idea of a story. Here's how we proceed. I like to keep things simple. I want to tell you there are really only two ways you can go. Every novelist has to choose one or the other. Yes, that's right. Two writing methods, and every author is going to use a variation of one or the other. I've given them names. You can either follow the plan, which means you've taken that basic idea and you've decided a few things about it, even taken it right through to fully working out chapter summaries for the entire book. Or you can follow the pen. That means you take that basic idea and you jump right in with the writing and just see what emerges from your subconscious, your imagination. Let's look at follow the pen first and see what's positive about that. Well, it requires little or no preparation, which means you jump right into your writing, so that favours the impatient. You get to start with that basic concept or sketchy idea. You don't have to try to work things out ahead of time. In fact, you can start without either. You can have no ideas in your head and just take a writing prompt, one from a book or one that I will give you, and you just see what emerges from that writing prompt. Your story may well start there. So in other words, what you're doing is letting your mind ramble. You're letting your subconscious dictate what's happening and your creativity. Here's a couple of examples. You remember that sketchy idea I had about the distraught neighbour whose husband had left her? Well, I've written a few lines. I've followed the pen, and here's what I've got. There I am, 2 weeks before our 20th wedding anniversary, ready to surprise him with 2 Pacific Island cruise tickets inside his anniversary card. And John calmly tells me over breakfast that he's been seeing a girl for some time and he's moving in with her this weekend. Okay, that emerged as first person, and in present tense, here's a conventional third person past tense. Marie Breton stared out the window at her retreating neighbour's back. What a fool she'd been to open up to that one or expect any sympathy. A quick hug to shut her up, and then she was off. She was undoubtedly on John's side anyway. Probably thought he did the smart thing to leave her after 20 years. Now, you're aware that this is the same story, but aren't these two characters different? I also mentioned writing sight unseen to a writing prompt. Let's have a look at that. Here's a prompt that you've never seen before. I haven't worked this one. I've just devised it. I want you to try it. Follow the pen and see where this idea ends up for you. As she walked along the beach in the moonlight, she saw the dark lump 50 metres ahead, tugged this way and that by the swirling wash. A massive kelp, she thought, or a beached dolphin. Okay, away you go with it, and don't let your reader down. You know it's going to be a body. So what are the downsides to follow the pen? Well, even though you're writing immediately, you're writing blind, driving blind. That means that you're likely to take a few wrong turns, get lost, maybe end up someplace you don't really like, or get stuck in the mud. At the very worst, after many months, there might be no sense to your journey at all. By the same token, you might proceed very calmly and end up with a novel with very little to change. Let's look at follow the plan this time. Well, okay, this is where you've taken the basic idea and worked it out a little bit. It could be worked out right to the point where you know everything that's going to happen, or you might have just worked out where things start and where you'd like them to end, and the middle bit is missing. So this can be worked out in your head, can be worked out on paper. You can put it in a desktop folder, on filing cards. That was an old idea that was very much favoured. Or you can buy a commercial writing program or app. I often have students ask me, Jim, what's the best app for me to buy? What's the app that you recommend? And I say, well, the only application I recommend is your backside to a chair seat. Just get in and start writing. Perhaps the greatest value of following a preconceived plan is the opportunity to ensure from the outset that your story has all the essential elements of a good plot structure. And when I say essential, I don't just mean important. I'm talking about the framework that your plot needs. Point 3, you know the elements of the story ahead of time. You know what happens next. And that means when the inevitable writing block happens, it's much easier for you to push through it. And because you've taken a very long and complex story and reduced it to a summary, it's much easier to work with a short summary. It's easier to decide on where things go, like chapter break, where to insert subplot chapters, and where essential revelations or red herring should be inserted. The downside to following the plan? Well, clearly it's a slower start to the actual writing and can often be a lot of work. So some may find it too daunting and just give up. Writing from the plan might end up being too mechanical. It's very easy to just think, I just have to follow what I've written and I've got a story. I found that some of my mentoring clients get really hooked on the mechanical aspects of writing. So they'll say to me, well, it's going to be 80,000 words. That means I need 20 chapters of 4,000 words. Well, why not just write and let the chapters look after themselves? You can always change things around later on. The other big issue with following the plan, if you've taken it to the extreme, is that you can be too buttoned down and less open to the creative voice. In other words, you start to believe that this is the only way this story could possibly evolve, and so you don't allow that creative voice to speak. I find it odd at times when someone employs me to be their writing mentor, and when I make some suggestions, they say, oh no, I don't want to do that because that's not the way the story goes. I just can't understand why you would ask someone to be a writing mentor under those circumstances. Maybe they want a rubber stamp. So that's following the plan. I've tried to put this into graphics. There's the plan, a nice straight line right down to the end. And there is what happens when you follow the pen, quite likely. Some detours and dead ends, but eventually you get to the end as well. Now, next lesson, I'm going to show you a variation I'm going to recommend the best, most useful writing process for a novice writer to get started. I'm going to talk again today about writing prompts. They're very useful little writers, but too many novice writers believe they're beyond that point. Well, I can assure you that many experienced, famous writers still make good use of writing prompts. I've identified 4 possible ways you can use a writing prompt. Now, the first one you're very familiar with, and that is just to get ideas for a new novel. And if you think that that's not possible, next lesson, I'm going to bring along one of my novels that did rise from a writing prompt, and I'll tell you that process. Number 2, if you have writer's block, if you're in the middle of your story and you just can't progress it, that's a great time to fish out some writing prompts. Number 3, just to still the mind. You want to sit down to the page, but the world is invading your head. All the problems of the day, all the things you should be doing, all the things that get in the way of creativity. Do a writing prompt to still your mind and get you ready to do the real writing for the day. Number 4. I'm taking credit for this, although they say there's nothing new under the sun. I'll probably learn that someone else has thought of it before. As you may realise, I have a real thing about people who presume there's only one way their plot can work itself out. I call it the monorail plot problem. And I'm going to challenge you, if you have a work in progress or an idea fully formed for a novel in your head and you really believe this is it, there's no other way it can go, I'm going to challenge you to do one of the writing prompts that follows and see if it doesn't unlock some new ideas. So there we are, 4 ways to use writing prompts. Yay!
Let's recap those 4 uses for writing prompts: to generate initial ideas, to overcome writer's block, to settle the mind for a writing session, and challenge monorail plot thinking.
Now, why do you think that I'm so persistent about writing prompts? Well, I'll tell you why. So many of us use our conscious mind too much when we're trying to write a novel. There's an expression, we're thinking it up. That means we're using the conscious mind. We're trying to shape something. We're trying to use problem solving, all those task-oriented things that our mind does so well normally. But it doesn't work so well for writing a book. We need the muse. We need our imagination. We need the subconscious mind to come into play. This is the same realm as dreams and daydreams. And that's there waiting to be tapped. Now, my theory is you need to exercise this regularly so that it comes to just simmer, to be sitting under the surface, ready to pop out on the page. I'm sure some of you have had the experience that I've had of writing and then suddenly it becomes easy. And when you look back, you think, did I write that? Yes. So how do we do this? Well, I say use writing prompts. You've got to give your imagination, your subconscious, permission to come out and play. Get it used to the idea that it's needed, that it's okay to come out into the daylight. There are so many different types of writing prompts. I've introduced you to 2, the use of physical objects, combining physical objects, and using brainstorming. Today I'm going to show you how you can use a single line, a hook, that you have to extend as a writing prompt. And I'm also going to talk about a wonderful idea. It's one that's used by a very famous Australian author. It may have been Peter Carey, I'm not sure. But this author uses a cardboard box, throws items into it all year round, and when the time comes to write a novel, he gets it out, tips out the box, and groups items and forms characters from them. Not plots, but the items suggest characters. Now I'm going to offer you this idea. Get yourself a box and just keep it somewhere. Into it, throw all manner of things. You pick up a feather, put that in it. Found objects, tickets for things, a message off a notice board. Go through newspapers, chop out intriguing headlines, items from the personal columns or for sale, things that grab your attention. Throw them in the box. If you're somewhere in public and you're overhearing conversations, keep a notepad, jot down a line of conversation, and when you get home, toss that in the box. You have a weird dream, before you forget it, write it down. Always keep a notepad beside your bed. The ideas you have in the middle of the night are the best, and they're gone by morning. So jot them down. You do a little bit of free writing that has no relationship to the work you're doing at the time, toss that in the box. At the end of the period, when it's time to reflect on a new novel, you can go through all this stuff, look at it and see what you've got. You'll be surprised at what can arise from it.
Okay, just to recap on this little beauty, the cardboard box all year round writing prompt. Find yourself a nice box, start right now, add to it magazine clippings, old photos, newspaper headlines, found objects, unusual ads you read, odd stories you read, memes, all sorts of memorabilia. Find evocative pictures, maybe setting ideas or unusual character photos. They're the physical things. Add to that your own jottings, some story ideas that come to you, the results of writing prompt exercises, little passages from your own writing that you didn't use elsewhere, and overheard conversation line. It's a great idea. Start today.
Okay, it's time for me to give you this prompt I promised you that will help you with writer's block. And it's also the challenge I'm throwing out to those with a monorail plot. A plot you think can't be changed or beaten. Here's what you do. Go back one chapter from where you are presently. Look for what the central incident is in that chapter. Was it conflict? Was it an argument between two people? Was it some sort of a major event like someone getting shot? Or was it some special development in the plot? And I want you to take that event and change it drastically. For example, if it's an argument, rewrite it so that the other person actually wins. If someone got shot, let it be that they were only wounded or they managed to escape. Whatever the event is, find some way to alter it and let it take your novel way off course. If it fizzles and it doesn't help you, you can come back and you'll probably have some fresh ideas. It may even give you a subplot. Here's the second challenge for those of you who believe their plot is locked in, set in concrete. Find somewhere in the novel where your central character is going somewhere. Might be by car, by plane, on horse, even walking. Now, take that travel incident and break it. The car breaks down, the horse breaks its leg, the flight is diverted. If they're on foot, they have a misadventure, they fall over and get injured. That means future events are drastically altered. Was a disaster averted? Was a piece of good fortune delayed? Was a meeting ruined? Think of what else might happen, how this will change your plot forever. And again, if you don't like what you end up with, you'll probably get some other ideas for subplots.
Well, it's hardly surprising that many writers prefer a written prompt rather than a physical one. So I've devised 10 one-liners as writing prompts. Opening lines to a novel that are calculated to be a hook. And if you think to yourself, now there's a novel I'd like to read, well, get in and write it. Take the prompt, start writing. And if you get to the end of the page and you think, well, it's fun, but I can't think of a story, throw that page into that cardboard box we've been talking about and keep it as a possibility for next time. Okay, here are the one-liners. There's little appeal in a beautiful woman who's holding a gun to your head. Maldred, or Mouldy as he preferred to be called, didn't look much like a wizard. Sometimes love comes like a tropical thunderstorm, unexpected, loud, blotting out the rest of the world. Or their relationship was unorthodox by any standard, but in the tiny hamlet of Belford it was shocking, worthy of a stoning. "Don't look now, but Auntie Vi has just climbed onto the bar and is starting to take her clothes off." When I asked to have the book delivered, I never dreamt it would end like this. "Don't touch it," he said. "I think it's a trap." "Sure, Paris, Venice, the Costa Brava, Barcelona, you name it. Where would you like to go?" It came back with a dent. Damn them, a dent. Simon was an all right guy, except for the fact that he felt compelled to lie, even about what he'd had for breakfast that day. So there you have it, 10 hooks, 10 possible opening lines for a novel, and they make pretty good writing prompts, so have a go. Now, if you would like an email copy of these prompts, plus a few other prompts that I can put together, then you'd better email me. Here's the email address. And if you send me your email, I will also add a notification when each new lesson goes up on YouTube. I can send you a bulk email to tell you about that. So there's the email address, writingcourse@hotmail.com, don't forget the hyphen, and put in a subject line, writing prompts, because unfortunately many of my business emails end up in my junk mail. It's very hard to work out which is which. Well, that's it for lesson 2. In lesson 3, I'm going to show you a technique I devised for novice writers, the very best and most useful way to go from that first idea through to writing chapter 1. Meanwhile, don't neglect your muse. Don't neglect your imagination. You know, your subconscious mind, your muse, is a little bit like your wife or partner. If you're nice to them, day in, day out, they will come unbidden, bring you a cup of coffee. They will come unbidden and bring you a cup of coffee. It was worth a try. Until next week, you keep safe.